Hello, my name is Brenton Harrison of New Money, New Problems, and we're here today to talk about a special type of property and casualty insurance called umbrella insurance. Let's get started. As a financial advisor, I find myself in conversations all the time where when people find out what I do, they start telling me about some financial loophole they discovered or something that a friend told them at a dinner party about how to make money, how to save money, how to protect yourself from liability. And the sentence usually starts, see, all you need to do is ... followed by some type of financial advice that is more often than not inaccurate, and in some cases illegal. And this is especially true when it comes to protecting yourself from liability. You might find someone that says, hey, if you're telling someone to do insert scammy advice here on your podcast or your YouTube channel, all you have to do is put this disclaimer at the end and nobody can sue you for it. Or they may say, oh, if you have a rental property and you're worried about your tenant suing you, all you have to do is transfer the rental property into the name of an LLC and then you can't be sued. Now, some of these things are not just inaccurate, they are potentially financially dangerous if you take this advice, but we're not going to focus on those things today because what I want you to understand, rather than focusing on the things that are inaccurate, is that in most cases, there aren't a lot of ways for you to avoid being sued if someone wants to sue you. There's no magic bullet that says this person is not allowed to sue you in most cases, but there are certain fixes and certain protections you can put in place so that if you're on the wrong end of a lawsuit, you have something to lean on in terms of shielding yourself from being financially harmed. When it comes to your professional pursuits, depending on your industry, there could be things like malpractice insurance. In my industry, there are things called errors and omissions insurance policies. But when it comes to your personal life and potential personal liability, there is something called umbrella insurance. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Umbrella insurance is really appropriately named because it functions as an umbrella over your existing auto and property insurance policies. See, auto and property policies exist to not only cover you from the cost of the potential medical bills, damages to your car, renovations to your home in the event of a bad weather event, but also to provide some coverage if there is any legal liability that is a result of another party or another entity being damaged in that event. As it relates to this personal liability, though, these property and casualty policies have two shortfalls. First, they all have their respective limits in terms of how much coverage they provide. In many cases, they're not going to give you unlimited coverage. So in the instances of larger legal or medical liability, you might find that your legal exposure or financial exposure exceeds the coverage which is found in your policy. Second, the protection that it provides is tied to the property in question, that car or that home or that separate structure that's associated with your home. So in the instances of personal liability that are not tied to an event that occurred in that property, you might find that you're left exposed. And that's where umbrella insurance comes in to potentially fill the gaps in both situations. In the first instance, where you have some legal or financial exposure that might exceed the coverage limits of the underlying policy, the umbrella insurance policy would potentially come in to cover that excess. And in certain instances of personal liability that aren't tied to a specific piece of property, like you being sued for libel or slander, umbrella insurance can provide some protections there as well. Compared to homeowners and even auto insurance, umbrella insurance is one of the most cost-effective forms of property and casualty coverage. It's not uncommon for you to be able to get $1 million worth of umbrella coverage for $10 a month or a little more. And that's $1 million per occurrence. So it doesn't mean $1 million over the totality of the policy. It means for each instance of potential liability that is covered under the plan, you would have $1 million per occurrence. So when it comes to pricing, the actual umbrella insurance policy is not that expensive relative to the other forms of coverage. But you do need to know that when you're trying to get umbrella insurance coverage, it is likely that the insurance company with which you're applying, is going to require that you have your underlying coverages with them as well. As an example, if you're applying with Nationwide for umbrella insurance, they might require that to be eligible, you have to have your homeowners and auto insurance policies with them as well. They also are going to have a set amount of coverage that you have to have with those underlying policies before you're eligible. And basically what they're trying to do is make sure that before they sign up for the additional liability protection that comes with umbrella coverage, that you have first maximized the coverage they offer with those underlying policies. Let's consider an insurance company that states that their minimum auto insurance coverage required for those seeking umbrella insurance coverage is $300, $500, $100, meaning $300,000 of bodily injury liability per accident, $500,000 of total bodily injury liability per accident, and $100,000 of property damage liability. This same insurance company might also require for those seeking umbrella insurance that they have a minimum of $300,000 of liability protection in their homeowner's insurance policy, meaning that if our applicant is seeking umbrella coverage through this company, they have to maintain at least these minimum levels of coverage with the underlying policies. A good rule of thumb is that if you look at the value of your assets, and that includes all your assets, investments, savings accounts, and they exceed the value of the limits found in your property and auto insurance policies, you're probably a good candidate for umbrella insurance. And the reason for this is if you think about the type of liability that could occur in the event of a lawsuit or damages, you want to make sure that none of those personal assets have to be liquidated to pay the claims that are in excess of those coverage limits. But even if you don't find that the value of your assets exceeds those coverage limits, it doesn't mean that you don't need umbrella insurance policies, because there are plenty of people out there where, because of their personal and social interest, they've put themselves in scenarios where they're at the risk of potential legal exposure. Here are a few specific high-risk activities characteristics of those covered by an umbrella insurance policy. You could be a public figure that gives professional advice. You could be an owner of an investment property that has tenants. You might be the board member of a public or nonprofit entity, and if you think that there's no legal exposure that comes with being a board member, in many cases you'd be mistaken. There is potential liability there. You could be the parent of an inexperienced driver. You could be the frequent host of social gatherings. You could be an owner of a pet like a dog or a snake, or have certain pieces of property like a swimming pool or a gun that could lead to injury lawsuits, or you could be a participant in potentially dangerous sports like skiing or hunting. All of these activities, while not all inclusive, they're characteristics of things that could make you more susceptible to a lawsuit whose damages could rise above your property insurance limits. And even if that risk is small, the affordability of your typical umbrella insurance policy makes the decision to protect yourself even easier. Now, earlier in this video, I referenced investment property owners who have been told or are telling others that to shield yourself from liability, you just need to put the ownership of that investment property in the name of an LLC as opposed to your personal name. Well, we're going to devote a specific post just to that piece of advice, which is in most cases inaccurate and in many cases dangerous and potentially legally and financially costly. So what I would say is, for now, I would want you to know that more often than not, doing that actually gives you more exposure to financial harm than simply using an umbrella insurance policy to protect yourself from the potential liability that could occur from a tenant who might have a fall in your property. So we're going to cover that later, but for now, I want you to know that if you find yourself in one of these scenarios where you have exceedingly valuable assets or you're in a high-risk activity, professionally or socially, you should consider any option like malpractice, errors and omissions, or umbrella insurance that could help protect you from that potential claim. That's it. That's umbrella insurance in a nutshell, and I hope it was helpful in showing you the difference between a pure property and auto policy and an umbrella insurance policy that exists to act as a shield above and beyond the coverage that you find in those underlying pieces of insurance. My name is Brenton Harrison of New Money, New Problems, and we're going to keep these videos coming to you as often as we can. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the notifications and subscribe to the channel so you know when new stuff is coming, and we'll be getting it to you soon. See you then.